Welcome to the Contractor Success Forum. Today we are talking about practical advice for one-owner construction firms. On the Contractor Success Forum, we discuss financial strategies for running a more profitable, successful construction business. And today we have in one corner Stephen Brown, McDaniel Whitley Bonding and Insurance Agency. And in the other corner we have Wade Carpenter and Company CPAs. And I am Rob Williams with Irongate Entrepreneurial Support Systems. So, Wade, man, what are we talking about today?
Well, I think the subject came up about a lot of our contractors are one owner construction firms, and many of them start out and they have trouble scaling up. A lot of times they'll work all day and do paperwork all night and weekends. And what they find out is that pretty soon they're not spending time with their family. They're making less than they were when they started out. And they're on this hamster wheel that they just can't seem to get out of. They're working all the time, and at some point, you get burned out. And I guess the idea is like, how do we get off this hamster wheel? How do we get out of this one man band syndrome? And so that's what we were hoping to throw out some tips for contractors because I do see a lot of one man bands do well, and there's a lot of them that don't do the things they need to do and they struggle all their life.
Oh,
So
yeah.
wait, when do they know they need some help? And how do they get help?
Well, there's a lot of things we can talk about there, but that's where I was going to throw out a lot of things. A lot of people don't realize when they should ask for help, but
Yeah.
I was just going to throw some practical things out there, and you guys chime in.
Yeah. I think this is a very valuable topic because I think even the guys that are no longer one-man band shows, almost all of us at one time were one-man band shows. Even when I had a company on the side, I was a one-man band. Even if I had another company, I've seen so many health problems and things that most of my guys actually are not even on this earth anymore because they've stressed out and they've died young. A lot of my really successful partners and friends that I've worked with because they were up all night, and I did that for long time. And hopefully I changed my course early enough and learned my lessons, but we'll see. I still have some late nights, early mornings sometimes. But yeah, how do we get out of this rat race?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of things we can say about this, but one of the things I see a lot of people, contractors or business owners in general, is they don't necessarily work smart. They don't know how they spend their time. Just a couple examples. I mean, with the era of COVID, a lot of people started using Zoom for virtual meetings and things like that. Before, they would drive all over the city, go into endless construction meetings or whatever, and they spend tons of time doing that. They may have the wrong things on their job, so they make endless supply runs to the Home Depots and the Lowe's and the supply houses, where if they had planned for it a little better, they could have saved some extra time. And all that extra time actually does translate to more money. Could you spend that time making money or bidding that next job? That's the point.
Yeah, if you're a one owner construction company, you kind of have to concentrate on what you do best and keep doing that. And anything else that gets in the way, that's kind of what you need to figure out how to get some help with or redelegate or do something.
Yeah, I constantly hear this big, what we call the colossal pumpkin story, growing that
Yeah.
colossal pumpkin and focusing on that one thing. It seems like so many different conversations that we have, different subjects kind of come back to that. And to get that in place, you've got to put these systems in place. And we're always working on, I'm diligently working on trying to put systems in place for myself right now with some of the new things that I've been doing. And getting those systems in place for me is the first thing you have to do. You have to define what those things are and get a system put in place. Even yesterday, I was just pulling my hair out trying to do something new and figuring it out and figuring it out. And so now I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that again. What could I have done, or what things can I put in place so it will go more smoothly next time? And can I
Right.
delegate to hire an assistant, something like that?
Yeah. So you're stealing my thunder. You're getting
Oh, nope,
ahead of my
sorry.
my points. But the second one, I think there's a lot we can say about our own time and just sitting down and tracking it for a week and seeing where you spend that time. But the second point, and there's a lot of sub points here, but a lot of contractors are afraid of technology. Maybe they're old farts like us that don't really do a lot with technology and they're afraid of it. And a lot of times you can hire a teenager to come in and show you how to use these things. And I know there's all kind of arguments about, well, I can't see sending a iPad out on a job and it'll get trashed. But our cell phones are with us all the time, and contractors have them with them all the time. And so a lot of the things, the technology is caught up. Are you guys seeing that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a 33-year-old and a 21-year-old assistants, 2 of those, and then I don't know how old my 3rd assistant is. Anyway, I've got some young guys or girls working with us on the technology, and it's interesting how they can just pick these things up so quickly. Or on the other hand, some of the things that we understand, then they don't get. So trying to go through these things and communicating and using some of this technology is interesting. We were just trying to go a list of our technology, what we're doing, because we brought so many things in, and now we're
Right.
trying to streamline that. Can we drop some of them and replace it with something that's already in the system that we have? I think we got a little carried away, so now we're trying to refine our number of systems.
Guys, I had
Yeah.
a contractor, and all of you have these stories, but he worked so obsessively, and he dumped everything except the work on his wife, who hated it. And they had been married for close to 50 years. And she told me that they had only taken 2 vacations, and both of them to see family. I don't know
That's
what to say about that.
yeah.
Maybe they were happy that way.
Yeah. Saving time, one of the things I just got this, if y'all are probably listening to this, not watching, but I just got this remarkable notebook thing. And when I take my notes in here, it uploads, and then my assistant can see all those. They can see all my handwriting stuff and figure out what I've been doing. Even if they don't need to summarize it, she doesn't know what I'm doing if I don't have this communication. And it's just neat. I'm not recommending this. I don't know if I'd even recommend it. There's some burdensome things about it also, but just the technology, just the fact that we can communicate like that, they can see what I'm handwriting all day
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. And
I
one of
if I
my
had that on a job site, wow, that would be really cool.
I know we push the point about job costing and things like that, but there's a lot of technology a lot of contractors don't know is out there, like GPS tracking on your trucks or your equipment, hour meters on the trucks. You have all kind of apps to document the weather. A few months ago, we had Chad Gill on here that
I was about to say that.
his app taking pictures and documenting, and that can give you a lot of information. I think information is key, and just spending a little bit of money on that can be a lot more efficient and cost effective than having your guys in the field that aren't going to do it. Number
Yeah.
one.
I know every time I've told people about that Chad Gill episode and taking those, just if they had 8 pictures from every job site, the people have been like, "Oh my god, that would have been amazing if I had had that," which means they weren't listening to our shows, or they would have
Yeah.
heard that.
That's episode number 27 for you folks that want to come
Oh,
listen to it.
Yeah.
The power
man,
of
what a man.
documenting your projects with Chad Gill.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's a client of mine. He's full outsourced, back office stuff. And he's told me some stories that he didn't communicate on that
Yeah.
podcast, but
But
it's
yeah, for a
amazing.
one-man show, gosh, some tools like that, that's yeah, and that is systematizing as well as getting the technology.
Well, sticking with the technology for just a couple other points on the technology, automating.
Okay.
I know this is not technically construction, but property management. I will never forget, probably close to 10 years ago, I had a property management company there was 6 ladies in the office, and then he had these other guys that were fixing toilets and stuff. Well, he learned to automate the stuff. There are a lot of apps that will talk to each other now with programs like Zapier and stuff.
Mhm.
He took that office of 6. He like created forms for everything. Somebody filled out a form, said my toilet's broke. It went all the way through and got the thing scheduled and all that stuff to take care of it, rent applications. He took that office of 6 ladies down to one person.
Wow. There's a couple 100,000 on your bottom line right
Yeah, I mean,
there.
that's an amazing story that I will never forget.
Rob, your
And
wife would like an app like that. She could send you things that need to be done. That would be very helpful to her.
Exactly. I keep deleting the app. It just I mean, excuse me, it keeps having technical problems on my phone.
yeah,
No, that's a great point, Wade.
yeah. And then the last point I had on technology, I'm a firm believer in software and apps and things like that when it will save time and money. But there are also apps out there for any number of construction add-ons to something like QuickBooks that will help you, or some more advanced accounting software. And the practical thing I would tell you is, number one, if you set it up wrong, it's never going to work for you. And I've had people spend years working on software that never comes to fruition. You need to keep in mind a lot of times that the rule of thumb is you're going to spend 2 to 3 times the cost of the software getting advice to get it set up.
Yep.
That's not cheap to do, but it's also can save you tons of time and energy. So I guess final point on this is, don't be snowed by what a software salesman will tell you. Read reviews, but take them for as a grain of salt. Talk to actual users of these software and find out what the learning curve and those kind of things.
I've heard a lot of horror stories about accounting software that had all the bells and whistles and was extremely slick until you tried to use it. And just the ongoing headaches, snafus, problems, and then basically they come back on you saying, well, you're not using it right. And
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
well, why don't you make it easy to use for me, please? And
Yeah.
all I can say is with accounting software, if you don't have a good construction oriented CPA, get one and take their advice. It's not a bad idea.
That brings to mind the Pareto principle on this that Michalowicz talks about a lot. Don't just implement what you see at a show. That's what I always seem to do. I'd see some great thing at a booth and want to go implement it. Take those things that you do most of the time. They're going to be 20% of your tasks that you do that is 80% of your work. So start looking at those things that you do repetitively every day, and then find a way to put a system process around that. Don't buy software for something that you do once a year, a couple of times a year. Start working smart on these by finding those maybe just only narrow down to 3 items that you do every year. Is there something you do every day, and start thinking about that thing? How can I spend less time doing this thing that I do every day? So the 20% of your tasks that are 80% of your impact, it's, to me though, it's probably the 2% of your tasks that are 98% of your impact is actually how it works, I think.
Well, the third major point, I like to call this cheap tools. When you buy cheap tools, you get what you pay for. I remember way back when I was a teenager, I liked to work on my own car and learn stuff about cars, and I would buy cheap tools, but they were cheap tools and they
Mhm.
would break and they wouldn't necessarily do the job as well. I know I've messed up parts and taken a lot longer. And if I had spent money on a quality tool that was the right tool for the job, I would have saved tons of time and money. Well, it's the same thing. I think contractors love their tools too. And maybe it's not the same kind of tools, but you
Yeah.
know, the same point goes with your people. You don't spend money on quality advice. I know, Stephen, you made the comment about people employing their spouse or their significant other or their sister in law to do their books, but they don't ever keep them up. They don't value them. They don't get paid for it. And they don't know necessarily what they're doing. Well, that can cost you a lot more than not having.
And once you have that family member in there, then you're a whole lot less likely to say you're fired. I hate the way that sounds, but I have lots of
Oh yeah, they're
stories
there
like
for
that.
good.
Well, you
Yeah.
love them and you want them to succeed and they want to help you. And it seems like a great fit at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the people and we have the tools. I guess you're making that comparison, the not the right fit. I'm not gonna call him a cheap person, but we'll just give him the benefit of the doubt and say it's just not a right fit in that job, and you get stuck, and then the tool might not be a fit. God, how many
Well, I
stories
mean,
do we have about tools that are bad? Just in the last 3 months. Has anybody tried to change a tire with the new tire wrench things that come in cars? I did that. I had to get a lug nut. It bent. I was doing the car. I don't know where the hell they get this metal. I'm doing the thing, and I'm definitely not Superman. I'm bending this cheap ass steel with my bare hands, trying to. The lug nut's too tight, so I had to buy one of these big, 4 thing that spins around just in case I need to change a lug nut and screws. I threw away a whole bag of screws the other day because I kept screwing them in, and the old wood I've got on my house, I was doing some stuff around there, is so hard. Every one of them was stripping because they use this cheap metal in these things. I don't know
yeah.
where they get these
And
things.
you get what you pay for, don't
You
you?
get what you pay for. So the same things Well, those are tools in this industry, and then software and things if it's not a right fit, and the people.
Oh,
That's a
every
great
time
point.
I buy a tool, I hear my dad lecture me on Craftsman tools.
Yeah.
Every single time. And I tell you what, I'm like you. I've got a whole shed full of lousy tools that are prone to break at any minute.
I do
So
too. Oh, no, no, I don't. A tree hit it a few weeks ago, so I don't have a
Mhm.
shed anymore. I have a shed on the ground.
there you go.
Lousy tools.
But anyway, Wade's point was that
Yeah,
you get what you pay for, and
yeah, exactly.
Sometimes. Yeah.
yes,
Sometimes, well,
not
because
just tools, but help, software, and everything else.
right, and actually, one of the prime examples, Stephen, you're one of those that construction-oriented insurance agent. I mean, if you go to these nationally commercials on your local guy down the street that does your insurance, I firmly believe people going to somebody like you for workers' comp, even if they're not doing bonding, or even trying to go to these national companies, and these people don't specialize in construction. I think Stephen would be willing to give you the advice and love to talk to you about your situation.
Sure,
And I know Rob does the same thing. If you're looking to improve your profitability, they'd be glad to, we're not going to give you a long tax plan or something like that for free, but I'm sure that these guys will sit down with you and love to hear your story and see how they can help you. And honestly, just in my business, going to H&R Block does not pay. And I think once you talk to somebody, and you can realize that paying a little more for what you get can be well worth spending the time and the money to talk to somebody that really knows what they're doing.
yeah, get the best you can find. Don't pay for bad advice.
Most of us are out here to create value, not bills. I think most of the people I deal with and talk to as professionals are really keeping that in mind of maybe not even taking a client if we don't see how they can get many times return value of what we're charging. I think that's a pre-qualification.
Just think about that first point about where you spend your time. Could you spend your time having somebody else do the paperwork for you, having somebody else do your estimating? Are you spending a ton of time doing estimating and you could employ somebody part time as you need them? A lot of contractors have no problems hiring day labor for a job, but when they think about hiring these core functions that are actually sometimes more critical, a lot of times getting somebody to do it on a part-time basis, it can be a lot more efficient and you get a lot better result when you hire the professionals.
Yeah, it's amazing how little job costs and attention it could take to pay for that one person. Because what is, say, let's just say it's a $10,000 thing or even $30,000. Most of the contractors that we talk to, just paying attention for a few hours on one job, these guys, it is a percent that can be $100,000 that you can save that you just don't have time to do because you're busy just getting it built, getting it built, getting it built. We don't look at it. I was very guilty of that. Didn't look at it relative in our mind of how much savings 1 or 2% on that job can be huge. Our relativity isn't like that. I know I had one older contractor tell me one time there was a big volume builder here in Memphis. He's like, man, every job I look at my concrete and I look at my lumber. And he had his priorities. And that guy made a lot of money. And he made sure that he had that in perspective because he knew it wasn't the percent increase. It was every job they needed to look at that lumber package because they could pay for it every time. So he had those people to help him and he had really good guys to back him up and support it.
And I guess one final point on this is part of it, but it's not really part of it. Rob and Stephen, I think you both can appreciate this, but when you're talking about financial information, there's a lot of contractors, business owners that are actually embarrassed to give their financials. They say, well, I'm not making profit. They don't want to reach out to somebody like us because they're embarrassed. Well, I think all three of us can say we've seen it and it doesn't shock us. And, true professionals, I believe my point is I go into how can we help you make more of this? Don't be embarrassed about your financials so that you don't go get real advice.
Absolutely not. I look at them all day long, financial statements, and some are great, some are not so great. But the best customers are the ones that want your feedback and want your ideas. And anyone that's a professional enjoys that status of being a professional. They want to be that for you. As we always said, always find the best professionals you can find.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't think you're alone in one of very few people that are embarrassed about their financials, because I'd say it's almost a rule of thumb that they're going to feel that other people think they're doing better than they're doing, especially because a lot of them will have these things out there, the cars and the houses and stuff. And so they're embarrassed to come to you. I'd say that's most of the people I talk to. It's not a rare occasion. That's most of them.
Yeah.
Especially Stephen, I remember getting my bonding thing when we started going commercial. I started going commercial because the residential was slowing down, and I was kind of embarrassed about my financials because we had been taking a nosedive. And you're like, "Oh, yeah, these are great." I'm like, "Are they really?" Because
Yeah.
they weren't as good as they had been, and I was having some issues. But everybody's like that, and especially the ones that I know, because I was before COVID, and so I tended to go with people I knew, and they're more embarrassed to talk to friends about it than strangers. So maybe you do need to reach out to a stranger instead of a friend, because it tends to be more embarrassing with their
Right.
friends, which that shouldn't be. It should be the opposite way, but that's not what I find. The
Right.
friends tend to cover it up more than the strangers. So
Right.
maybe call a stranger. I'm from
Yeah.
this show, from the
Yeah.
Contractor Success Forum.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming to one of the first points Rob and Stephen made is systematizing. A couple of my favorite books in this world were The E Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, who actually was a contractor, and there's also Clockwork by Mike McAllowitz. Both of those things talk about systematizing your business so you can run it. And I truly believe when you do it right, you build more value in your business and you make it a lot easier on yourself. One of the biggest things I see in construction is people reinvent the wheel all the time, a new project or whatever, and they start over. You guys see that?
I do. Starting from scratch when you've already got something good going on.
Yeah. Or if there's a solution out there, starting from scratch when you can bring it in. And
Right.
what is a system? I know we talk about it so much, but I remember being intimidated of I thought a system was a complex computer program. I think, it had to be this Gantt chart or something. A system can be something as simple as a whiteboard. It can be something simple. It doesn't have to be something complicated. And actually, when those people came in to work with me, I remember Eli Goldratt. I worked with him some from the Gold, and then the University of Alabama PhDs. I thought a system had to be this complex program. And the first thing the car manufacturing consultants that came in, they said, "Man, get rid of these computer programs." They put everything up on a whiteboard with post-it notes. And we made so much progress in there because we could not get these complicated systems. A system can be something as simple as there are three things you do every time you step foot on a job, or it's every time you come in the morning, or when you go here. That's a system. Put these systems in place to get habits. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Right.
Simplify it.
Keep
I
it
mean,
simple, stupid.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Kiss.
I guess the simplest thing, having a template for estimating jobs or whatever. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of times I will see somebody does it their own way and they're used to doing it, but they finally scale up a little bit and they hire somebody and they bring somebody in that has experience and they bring in their own way, or they bring in another accountant that changes their accounting system. You got to say, this is the way we do it, and enforce that. If you got a good system, I always encourage people, I want to hear your feedback, and there's always room for improvement, but we're not going to throw out the system unless we change it. We talk about it, and everybody's going to do it the same way.
Man, I have seen that so many times, that these really successful contractors that had this system, but they would go to this national meeting and there's some guru, and they hire a guru to come in, and they completely flatten the systems, or flatten it out, and they had this whole new system and they created chaos. So I guess it's almost opposite of what we're saying, but it, you need a system, and be simple, but don't get into the guru syndrome of throwing away your systems that you have. Those are actually two separate points. We're saying systematize it, but yeah, that's another great point. Stick with your good systems and don't just throw it out for the latest book. We are promoters of some books and things,
Right.
but so yeah, where is that balance in there, Wade?
Yeah. The other point I had on this was delegating. I think back to Michael Gerber's story in the E-Myth Revisited about you hired somebody and then you got dependent on them and then they leave or something happens and then you're starting all over. And people get gun shy and they say, well, they can't do it as well as I can. Or if I teach them my system, they're going to take it and start their own shop or take it to my competitor. You got to get past that.
Mhm.
You got to learn to delegate. And that's something that you learn over time as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and in order to delegate it, you don't have to have a system, but it sure makes it a lot easier. And that can be as simple as recording what you're doing and just talking about it. I know Michalowicz got into that a lot because he over systematized things and he backed up and he said, let me just show you how to do it once, maybe on a video. And I think that was one of his most common ways he does it now because he was over documenting. I had all these 3-ring binders, over systematized everything, and by the time we would pull the binder out, it was out of date, so you don't have to over document this stuff, but delegating it with some systemization. Delegate, don't abdicate. What's the difference there? You don't completely walk away. We had a 5-step training program that came with all that Toyota Way manufacturing thing. You do it, you show it, and then you involve them. And you had these 5 steps and you watch them do it a couple of times. Then finally they do it on your own without their questions. And then after that 5 or 6 step process, they own it and they understand it and they maybe know how to do it better than you do.
Exactly. I had one more point about
Yeah.
partnering and joint ventures. I think that was one of our favorite episodes that people have listened to in the podcast on joint ventures, but I think maybe we can expand on that again later.
Yeah, but, we'll just quickly say, if you don't have those skills, find somebody that can. Set the
Well, that and a joint venture doesn't have to be a long term partnership. And a lot of times it can get you in with some people that you may not be able to work with before, introduce you to some
Yeah,
people, but it doesn't tie you down to having share profits with somebody. So
yeah.
we can talk about that more
Yeah,
on.
if you don't
Sure.
have that skill, maybe find somebody that has that skill,
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a per project joint venture.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very easy to do.
Yeah.
Sounds more complicated than it is. And only other thing I'd say before we finish this podcast today is how well do things run when you're not around? So we talked about being a one owner firm where you're doing everything, including the paperwork. And then what if you go on vacation? Does anything get done? Who does it? How much productivity is lost or gained?
mm,
That's what you want to shoot for. And we talk about a lot of these sort of things on the Contractor Success Forum,
yeah.
and it's healthy. Right now, in our insurance agency, 2 of the principals are gone for a week, and everything's clipping right along. Everybody's got their work to do, and we got the systems in place, Wade.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. The goal is that it works better when you're out of town than it is when you're in town. So
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
that means you're good. It's not good because you're there, and that's the reverse ego thing. People think that they're good because it works better when they're there, which it's actually the inverse is true. So, all right. Well, this has been great. This has been worth every minute of the extra time that we went over today.
Okay.
Anything else we got, guys, on the Contractor Success Forum?
I think we can throw those in some future episodes, some thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, we got future episodes and go to contractorsuccessforum.com and scroll through that magnificent list of all these great topics that we have and go listen to some. It's your free online guide to this vast source of knowledge for the construction industry for contractors.
And if
So,
they want to get in contact to us, our contact information is on that page as well.
yeah, set it up, go. We have resources. I don't know when you're listening to this, but we probably have a LinkedIn page or we might have things. So those resources of what our current way to ask us questions so we could have future episodes. Yeah, if you have something on there, we'd love for you guys to come up with the topics. So send us an email, go on Facebook, go on LinkedIn, send us some comments, ask us some questions. But lots of ways to contact us. We love your feedback, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show on the Contractor Success Forum. Thanks.